Hello and welcome to Casually Current, a casual cinemedia podcast. My name's Chris.
My name's Mike.
And my name's Justin. Casually Current is where we watch and discuss current film and TV releases.
Today we are going over Greta Gerwig's directorial debut and Best Picture nominee, Lady Bird. So before we get started, I wanted to remind everyone that we are doing an Oscar bet this year. So in this Oscar bet, everyone chooses their own Oscar picks of what they think is going to win. Not necessarily their favorite movies in each category, but what movie in each category you think is going to win. Send that in to us through email, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, the Facebook group, whatever you want to do. If you win and guess all the Oscar picks better than any of us, we will contact you and let you choose a movie for us to review. It can be Criterion, it can be Current, whatever, as long as it's a normal length movie and not something utterly ridiculous. We'll go ahead and put a review out for you. So yeah, hit us up and let us know what your picks for the Oscars are this year.
Yeah, and we're also in the contest too. So like, if one of us wins, we get to make the other two watch a movie as well. So, you know, we look forward to the challenge.
I've already won, so I mean, I've already nailed it, guys. So, I mean, you can send them in, but just be warned, you know, I've already won.
Yeah, and if you want to send in your picks, you can do so on Facebook at facebook.com/casualcinemedia. You can do it in our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/casualcinemedia. You can send it to us on Twitter and Instagram at casualcinemedia, or if you want to email us directly, you can do so at casualcinemedia@gmail.com. Yeah.
All right. We look forward to reading all of your picks. We've gotten some already, but not a whole bunch. So there's still time for you to pull ahead and force us to review something that is great or terrible.
Yeah. Or neither.
Yeah.
Have us review something completely mediocre.
Yeah. Which I would prefer something terrible to something mediocre.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, before we get into Lady Bird, let's talk about what's on our mind. And Mike, do you want to go first?
Sure. So lately I've been watching some movies. I watched the thriller disaster movie Geostorm that came out earlier this year. Have you guys seen this? Have you heard about this?
Heard of, but not seen.
Yeah, I've heard of, but not seen.
It's awful. It's absolutely terrible. It's so bad. It's like it came out like 15 years too late. This deserves to be like in the day after tomorrow volcano times, like circa 98 through 2003, somewhere like that. This movie is entirely dated. It's utterly ridiculous. Gerard Butler plays a scientist who created a gigantic machine in the sky that can control the weather. So automatically the plot is utterly ridiculous because you're never going to believe in a million years that Gerard Butler could invent anything. And then
I'm laughing at the tagline. The tagline is "Some things were never meant to be controlled."
Oh,
and I just
like
assume
the weather
that refers to the weather.
Yeah. And then you have the guy from across the universe playing his brother,
Jim Sturgis.
Yep. And anyway, it's just a huge, gigantic piece of crap.
Gerard Butler's
big surprise.
Gerard Butler's kind of the king of B movies, with Geostorm and the White House Falls. What was the name of that?
White House
Down.
White House Down, and then they did the London Down.
London Has Fallen, or something.
Yeah,
like
London
that?
Has Fallen.
Wait,
Which is a sequel to that.
No, hang on. We're getting these mixed up. Hang on. White House Down, wasn't that the Channing Tatum?
Oh, is Olympus Has Fallen?
Olympus Has Fallen.
Oh,
is
yeah,
the,
that's the one.
is
The Gerard
the
Butler
Because there's the two that came out at the same time.
Yeah. Well, anyway, you're right though. Gerard Butler's movie career sucks, and anyway, this movie's just about what you would expect. I don't know why I watched it, other than I had like an hour and a half to kill, and I wasn't looking for something that required me to pay that close of attention.
Yeah.
So,
You're a better man than us.
Yeah, if you like bad movies, give it a spin. The next movie I've been watching is actually much better. It was from 1977, directed by William Friedkin of The Exorcist fame and The French Connection fame, and Killer Joe and Bug. It's a movie called Sorcerer. Have you guys heard of this?
Yeah, this is the prequel to Lord of the Rings, right? About Gandalf the Grey, like before he...
Yeah, that's totally it. No.
He's a sorcerer.
I thought it was a prequel to Sorcerer's Apprentice with Nicolas Cage.
Yeah, closer. No, it's actually a remake of Wages of Fear. Have you guys seen Wages of Fear?
Yes. Yeah, that's one that I really, really love. So
Yeah, it's
I'm
great.
more interested in Sorcerer now than I was when I thought it was the Nicolas Cage prequel.
Right. Well, actually, I didn't know what this movie was about when I started it. And it wasn't until about 45 minutes into the movie where I was like, wait a minute, I know every beat that's going to happen from here on out. And I didn't, actually. It's just different enough from Wages of Fear to be interesting and merit its existence. So it's not a beat-by-beat remake of Wages of Fear. If any of you guys or anyone listening has actually seen that movie, hopefully that makes you want to see Sorcerer, if you haven't, more, not less, because usually remakes are pretty terrible. Yeah, and if you haven't seen Wages of Fear, I guess the other movie that I would compare it to would be, have you guys seen Vertical Limit, the mountain climbing movie?
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
also one I like, not as much as Wages of Fear.
No, it's definitely no Wages of
I
Fear.
do like Vertical Limit.
But it's a fun 90s thriller. I think it's the best word for that. And Bill Paxton's pretty great in it.
Yeah.
And the guy played Robin.
Chris O'Donnell.
Yeah, Chris O'Donnell.
Yeah.
That's the name.
So this is the second, that one is the second best Wages of Fear remake, and Sorcerer's better?
Yeah, I would say Sorcerer, and this might sound blasphemous, but I prefer it to Wages of Fear because I like the ending more.
Okay.
But I won't be specific, but if you remember how Wages of Fear ended, I wasn't a fan of the last 5 minutes of that movie. But yeah. I really dig the end of Sorcerer quite a bit. It stays true to the original ideas, but delivers you something different. Yeah.
Awesome.
What about you? Christopher?
Yeah, so I got to watch a movie that I've been meaning to watch for a while called Colossal with Anne Hathaway and
nice.
Jason Sudeikis, if that's how you pronounce
Sudeikis?
Sudeikis. Sudoku, yeah. I just imagine him doing the Japanese puzzle. He actually invented the Japanese puzzle. Just a fun fact. You can look it up on IMDb. It's true. But it's a really good movie, and there's a lot I don't necessarily want to give away, but Anne Hathaway plays an alcoholic party animal that has to move back to her small town, and Jason Sudoku, he plays like her friend from grade school, and they meet up, and some weird stuff starts happening. Have you guys? Neither one of you guys have seen this, right?
No.
Yeah, I just feel like to tell any more about it, go watch it. Like, it's a really fun movie. It's surprising, and it's a lot of fun. You check it out. If one of you guys check it out, we can talk more in depth about it later. But I recommend it. I mean, it's not the best movie ever, but it's like a 7. So it's right up there with Black Panther.
Yeah.
I noticed
on
it's from
Justin's scale.
It's from the director of Nacho
Libre?
Vigalondo, who directed Time Crimes. Have you guys seen Time Crimes?
Oh, yeah. Time Crimes is great.
Yeah, Time Crimes is a solid little action movie, sci-fi movie, so that actually makes me more interested in Colossal than I was before.
The ideas behind Colossal are really cool. Like, and I could see that him being the same director. Did he write it, or was it a different author?
Let me check.
I got really hyped on the idea that it was from the same director as Nacho Libre.
He did write it.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So that makes a lot of sense. You guys should check it out. If I win, maybe that'll be my choice. I mean, when I say if I win the Oscar bet, I mean when I win the Oscar bet, maybe that'll be my choice.
Because you already have, according to you.
Yeah. So the second thing I wanted to say is Annihilation came out this week. And across the seas, across the pond, I believe it's anywhere but the U.S., really, Netflix has bought this movie, and it is going to go straight to Netflix instead of playing in theaters. And
right. Whereas here it just opened in wide release.
Right.
Yeah.
And I saw it this weekend, and this is your opportunity. If you're in the United States, go see this movie. It deserves to be seen on the big screen. Whether you like the movie or not, I think I'm kind of against this whole Netflix not releasing movies. I don't care that they go straight to Netflix, but I would like to see these movies on the big screen. Mute just came out, and I would love to have the opportunity to see that on the big screen, but I'm not going to get that chance. So go see this in the movie theater. You know, like pay your $10, or if you have a Movie Pass,
it needs your support.
Whatever it is. Yeah, and it's not just Annihilation that needs your support. It's the future of these movies going straight to Netflix. If Netflix sees, or the movie studios, because Paramount sold it to Netflix so the movie studios see that they can make money off these movies. It'll go to the theater. So that's just my recommendation. Also, we're probably going to do a bonus episode here pretty soon on Annihilation, so stay tuned for that.
Sweet.
And that's going to be a fun episode.
Yep.
I'm excited.
For $10 a screening, you can help protect a movie from going straight to Netflix. You'll get a picture of your movie, a poster.
Yeah.
And you won't have to you can feel good and not sad about lonely, starving movies on Netflix that aren't being seen by anybody because Netflix's UI is awful.
Yeah, and Natalie Portman needs your money. I'm sure Alex Garland needs your money. I know it sounds silly, but that's just my feeling on the whole go to the theater to see this movie because it deserves to be seen there.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know who's editing this episode, but can whoever's editing it put Sarah McLachlan over over this segment?
Yes.
Thanks.
Absolutely. All right, well, that was my what I've been thinking about over the last week or so. Justin, I think you've got some news. You got some good news this week, right?
I have the best news this week. News that I'm so excited about. I think it's, if you've listened to the podcast before from the beginning, you'll recognize that I'm a fan of the Rush Hour films, right? And we found out this week, confirmed by, I think, both Chris Tucker and Jackie Chan in like 2 different times, not necessarily at the same time, but the Rush Hour 4 is happening.
So exciting.
I'm giving you the pause to cheer, celebrate, run around, do a victory lap. Yeah. I know I did. But
it's not Brett Ratner again, is it?
I would assume Brett Ratner is not involved at all, and I hope that he's not.
Didn't he have some problems with the along with the Weinstein stuff? So like
he did, and
so maybe.
Oh, did he? I just thought he was a shitty director.
Oh, no,
and he apparently a shitty person too.
Yeah, he has some Harvey Weinstein-esque issues going on, so I think he's kind of out of the game, and I assume will have nothing to do with Rush Hour 4, which is fine. I'm fine for seeing some new life.
Didn't he put Roman Polanski in Rush Hour 3? Speaking of creepy dudes.
Yes, he did.
Birds of a feather.
That's right. Yeah. But yeah, so this is the first installment of a weekly segment where I will be updating you every week on the status of Rush Hour 4.
Oh, sweet.
It's called the Rush Hour Rushes.
What about just Rush's Hour?
Yeah.
Rush's Hours. Harder to say, but maybe better.
I actually think we should just start a new podcast called Rush Hour, and then only be 45 minutes because it'll be a rushed hour.
So my next bit of news,
or the requirement could be that you have to listen to it on like 1.5 speed.
Yeah, really fast.
But the episodes have to be exactly 1 hour.
Then what we should do is we should release them slowed down so that they have to be listened to.
We'll do a 15-minute podcast and stretch it out to an hour.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyways, my next bit of news,
we'll figure it out,
if I may. I did watch a lot this week, so I'm going to kind of rapid fire through at least this one. The next one might be a little bit more discussion heavy, but first up, I watched the Apu Trilogy, which is a box set from the Criterion Collection. I believe it's spine number 782.
The Simpsons?
Yeah, it's about the Simpsons character and how he got to own the Quickie Mart. But not really. It is a set of films from the 50s, made in 1955, 56, and 59, respectively, from Satyajit Ray, who's one of the great Indian directors, and I have actually not seen any of his other films before this, but I've owned this box set for like a year and a half, maybe a little bit longer, and just have wanted to watch it, never found the time. This week I did it, so I'm just I'm really excited and just want to like share it with you guys and the world that I watched it.
Does it feel good?
It feels great.
It's about time.
Yeah. The unfortunate thing is that in my laziness, after I watched the first film and I went to watch the second one, I grabbed the third one and put it in and watched the entire thing before realizing that I had put in the third movie. So I ended up watching them, the first movie, the third movie, and then I watched the second one.
So you kind of Pulp Fictioned it, huh?
Yeah. I re-edited it for them. Which... the way that the films are structured, it's easy to do because they don't necessarily like follow like one big long plot line. It's just kind of like each film is like a different period of this guy's life,
like the Antoine Donnell box set.
Yeah, much like that. And the Antoine Donnell box set doesn't do it either. But this one doesn't end with like him at old age getting ready to die or anything like that. So it's like it's pretty hard to tell that the third movie was not just the second movie. Mm-hmm. In my defense.
Or you could have looked at the DVDs.
Yeah, you can look at the box and tell very, very easily, but
that ship sailed.
Yeah, it's too late now. So I'm a little sad that like maybe I like messed up the experience a little bit, but overall, even regardless, like all of these movies are incredible. Especially like Pather Panchali, the first film, is amazing. It's Satyajit Ray's like first film, so it's really interesting to see the first film of a director who went on to be like basically like the Ingmar Bergman of like Indian cinema
It's
in terms of work output, not necessarily the same sort of subject matter. The films are all like very like neo-realist.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely a blank spot for me. I really need to watch like basically any Indian movies, dive into it. Have you seen them, Mike?
No, I haven't. It's been something that's been on my radar for quite some time because it always had a cool cover.
Yeah. Well, highly recommend. It's great. It's probably like up there in like one of my favorite like trilogy of films.
Nice.
Ever. So
cool.
Recommend. So last thing I want to talk about is at the request of you two gentlemen who have talked to me over these podcasting months that we've been doing this so far about Marvel films, and you have both the different points suggested that I watch Thor Ragnarok.
Yeah, just to catch everybody up, I guess, Justin's he hasn't been watching a lot of the Marvel movies, so he's trying to catch up for the Infinity Wars, so he's catching up, because generally he doesn't
trying
like
is
it
a
very
stretch.
much. Yeah.
But I did watch Thor Ragnarok.
What'd you think?
I really hated it. I did not find it funny, save for like one, maybe two parts. I didn't find the story interesting. It just felt like, I don't know. It just didn't work for me in any way. I can see how they were trying to do like different things than like a Marvel movie. They were trying to be more campy, more self-aware, make it more of like a comedy, but like, I don't know, like it looked weird to me. Like it didn't look, it was like way too CG, which I think is something we were talking about like with like the Thor world. Like I just felt like I was constantly watching people on like a green screen, and I don't know, the humor didn't land for me. Like I don't think Thor's interesting.
Well, I felt that in Thor 1 and 2 for sure, but I didn't feel the green screenness in this one quite as bad as I felt in like whenever he's in like his home world hanging out all the time, like Asgard.
Yeah, I super felt it when he was in the trash Jeff Goldblum helmed world.
That one felt okay to me, but I can see your point in that it looks maybe a little weird.
Yeah, and I can understand how you guys would like think that I might be interested in it, since I'm like generally lean towards like comedies being my favorite films, and it's more of a comedy. It's directed by Taika Waititi.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm saying that name right. But he did What We Do in the Shadows, which is again is another film I didn't like.
So maybe so let me ask you this. Do you think it's the Taika Waititi-ness that you didn't like, or the Marvel Thorness that you didn't like more than anything?
I think it's both. Like I guess like that's but what I'm basing it off of the other films of his that I've seen. But like the first Marvel movie that I really like couldn't stand was Thor. I never bothered with Thor 2, whatever that one's called. And then finally, I was told like Thor Ragnarok is really different. It's this comedy, and it's still just like it didn't work for me at all. Like I thought the first Thor was like funnier than Thor Ragnarok. Like when he goes like on Earth, like that was the most entertaining part of that movie, and I don't think anything in Thor Ragnarok like hit that height. I think you guys both like the movie, so what is it that you guys see in it? Because I don't know, like maybe just tell me something that I missed. I don't know.
I think the fact that Thor is such, well, like you were saying, like Thor 1, and you didn't see Thor 2, but Thor 2 definitely suffers from that as well. It's that it takes itself too seriously, and Thor isn't interesting enough to be serious. So I think the idea that Marvel isn't acting precious with these properties anymore, and that they're giving it into the hands of someone that can put together and give you all the structure of like a normal comic book movie, like the climactic action scene and the fights, and the stuff that's going to sell toys and the stuff that's going to get people in the seats, but they're not so precious with the lore that like you can't have Chris Hemsworth and like Taika Waititi like improving off of one another for a little bit.
Yeah.
And I don't normally think improv films real well, but I think Taika Waititi has a good sense of like when to end a joke and not have it go on too long, which is what I feel like a lot of improv stuff does. And I also think Chris Hemsworth, who plays Thor, is very funny, and he's a charming guy, and I like watching him get to be funny and not have to act Shakespearean in subject matter that doesn't have the depth to cover it. So
two things. Have you guys seen probably not Justin, but there's Thor and his roommate? Have you guys ever seen that?
Yeah, I saw that.
The little shorts, those are hilarious. You should check them out. They're pretty funny. It's just Thor living with a roommate, and they're like, Thor tries to pay rent in like seashells or something like that. It's pretty funny. The second thing is, I don't know how you can't love this movie when, or at least the moment where the Hulk shows up, and he's so happy to see the Hulk, and he's like, whoa, he's here. We're friends from work. It's just this,
I like how he calls him a friend from work.
Yeah.
That makes me laugh.
Yeah, it's just such a fun moment. And maybe it's, I mean, I don't know. For me, that's so much fun.
I think it really just comes from like how much goodwill you have towards this whole idea of Marvel movies, right? Like Chris and I can go to even the lesser Marvel movies and still get why we're watching it. I think it's like you and Lost, right? You can recognize now that it's over that Lost has its flaws. I've heard you recognize those flaws, but that doesn't mean it's not enjoyable for you. So the Marvel Cinematic Universe is like a TV show that's had some rough patches. Like, not every episode's a hit, but I like the characters, I'm invested enough in the actors, and I care about the overall story enough to keep watching, and I'm not opposed to laughing whenever they don't take themselves too seriously, as long as it's not annoying.
Yeah, I wanted to laugh. It just, it just never happened for me because, I don't know, none of the humor hit for me, and oh well. I mean, it's okay. We can move on. I just wanted to let you guys know that I finally...
Before we move on,
saw it.
Are you going to watch Civil War before Infinity War comes out?
If you couldn't hear that, Justin just made a really deep sigh. He was just like,
let's put it this way: if you don't want to, you won't like it. Does that make sense? Like if you already don't like it and you don't want to, don't watch it because it won't improve your experience. But if you find that you can sit there for 2 hours and 15 minutes and not be bored, no matter what the movie is, I would say sit down and watch it. Because I think it will improve your experience with Infinity War. Because I think that's the most important Marvel movie that has happened in like the last 5 or 6 years, as far as like what the story is going to be going forward.
Yeah, I'll watch it so I'm not confused. Because I will say that like I was confused at first in Thor because I didn't realize that it was the Incredible Hulk that came out because I didn't know he was not
on Earth.
So I think there's value to watching it if I'm ever gonna enjoy Infinity War.
I agree, and I think that watching all of them and viewing them as like episodes of a TV show is really the only way you can enjoy this kind of movie series, because I think as standalone movies, like if you're going in this thinking I want to pull out all the complicated emotions that I felt on like a real movie that doesn't have a franchise behind it, you're not going to get that. You never will with these movies. They're just not made that way, They are made to be pieces of a whole.
Yeah, how many pieces have to be not enjoyable for you before like it's irrelevant whether you watch it as a TV show or not?
Yeah,
I'll watch them.
Yeah, so you'll probably never love them. That's probably just the way it is. But I do think that there's a certain time you get to where like they do start getting better.
Too bad you started a podcast where we have to watch them.
Yeah.
So now you're forced to.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on and move into our discussion on Lady Bird,
which is also part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
I want to go where culture is, like New York, or at least Connecticut or New Hampshire, where writers live in the woods.
Get into those schools anyway.
Mom,
you can't even pass your driver's test.
Because you wouldn't let me practice
the way
enough.
that you work, or the way that you don't work, you're not even worth state tuition, Christine.
My name is Lady Bird.
Well, actually, it's not, and it's ridiculous.
Call me Lady Bird like Christine. You said you would.
You should just go to City College. With your work ethic, just go to City College and then to jail, and then back to City College, and then maybe you'd learn to pull yourself up and not expect everybody to do everything.
And so Lady Bird is a film by Greta Gerwig, who's an actress who's been in some pretty great films, and this is her first film. It's set in 2002. It's basically a coming-of-age story about a girl who's getting ready to graduate high school and go to college in Sacramento. And so I guess just generally, your thoughts on Greta Gerwig or the movie, whatever you want to talk about. Do you want to go, Chris?
I really liked Lady Bird. I was really disappointed when I first started watching it and confused, legitimately, because I thought this was going to be a biopic about Lyndon B. Johnson's wife, Lady Bird. But once I got over that, I really enjoyed the film. I thought Laurie Metcalf did a really great job. It was kind of this... Oh, you know what I was reminded of at the beginning? I saw it twice. I was reminded of Armored, how they introduce all these characters without them saying anything. It's like they're introducing people from the town, and they haven't been introduced as important people, just people around the town. They mix them in with everybody else, kind of like Armored. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you got that feeling or not from it, Justin.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it's a feeling you don't get until a second and probably even like a third viewing. And I did watch this one a second time.
Yeah.
And I can understand that because, you do recognize those characters. You're like, oh, yeah, this is, this is the guy that X is going to happen later in the movie.
How do you say her name? Ronan? Sasha? Saoirse Ronan?
Or
Saoirse Ronan. I thought she was really good. Saoirse Ronan. Just really good acting all around. And then the other thing I liked about it is that they don't dumb it down for the audience. They don't explain everything that's happening. You kind of have to figure it out on your own, like the relationships sometimes between the different characters and stuff like that. Yeah, ultimately, this is... same thing with Get Out. I am so excited to see what Greta Gerwig does next. I can't wait, to see her next movie. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, I agree. I think this movie is very good. I think Saoirse Ronan is fantastic. And I also think Laurie Metcalf is amazing in this movie, but everyone has been talking about her this year. So that's no surprise to anybody. One thing that I actually like a whole lot about this movie is I think it rewards repeat viewings. The first time I saw it, there were belly laughs, like, dry humor, But I didn't quite understand the movie that I was watching, tone-wise. And then the second time I watched it, I found it hilarious. Like, everything about it was hilarious to me. Her friend, Julie, played by Beanie Fieldstein, I thought she was really funny. Like, her crush on the teacher was really funny to me. Like, every time he would, like, compliment her for being smart, she'd be like, oh, thank you, like, so dreamy-eyed. And I thought that was just so good. And, it's what Saoirse Ronan's doing is hilarious, too. And the first time, I was just like, man, Lady Bird is such an unlikable character that I just do not like her at all. But the second time, I was like, oh, she's hilarious.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where like you can look back at yourself and things that you did and thought were cool and thought like that you needed to get passionate about as a youth.
How clueless you were as to who you really were. Yeah.
You can laugh at yourself later, but when you're going through it
it's so
and experiencing it for the first time, it feels important or like the biggest thing in the world. And when you go back and watch it again or think back on it, like you just kind of laugh at it. So I think you're right.
Yeah, well, it's like the idea of calling herself Lady Bird. Like, I never had an alternate name when I was a teenager, but I definitely went through some embarrassing stuff that I thought was cool at the time that I would cringe to think about now, right? So the idea of a girl thinking like, well, my name Christine sucks because my mom gave that to me. I want to be Lady Bird. Like, that's going to be something she's going to cringe about for the rest of her life. But while she's a teenager, it makes total sense. She thinks it's important, and she thinks it's her.
Yeah.
What do you think, Justin?
Yeah. I really.
Were you also expecting a Lady Bird biopic?
Yeah, I was expecting the biopic of the dog from King of the Hill, though. Lady.
That's what I kept
Bird
thinking
Johnson.
of.
Yeah, this title is very confusing. So that's a notch off just for the title.
Yeah. Anyways. Yeah, I really, really love this movie. I've watched it twice now. Second time was, even better than the first. And I think like subsequent viewings will only get better. And I think that also I'm a bit of like the perfect age to like watch this movie. And I don't know if it doesn't quite make me feel old, but like, watching a girl being in high school in 2002, I graduated in 2004. So like a lot of the things that are going on.
Graduated in 2004?
From high school, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, you're old, Chris. I'm not yet. But there's a lot of like the music is all stuff that I, was listening to and had heard, and a lot of the things that are going on in the world, the fashion, like cell phones just starting to exist, and like some people had them and some people didn't. You'd get a cell phone, it was for emergency use only, like all of this stuff, like it really hits like hard in the like nostalgia area of the brain, which is one thing that I think really works for me on like a personal level. I don't know that that's like a testament to how good the film is as much as like just happenstance that I happen to be the right age to be watching it.
Yeah, I mean my personal take is, and I graduated in 99, so but like the things that she's going through, whether there's cell phones or not, is universal. Like whether you're a female or not is universal. Like those growing pains, and so that's the nostalgia. That's why it's so good.
Yeah, that's what makes the movie I think work for everybody, and why I think most people who watch the movie would like it. I think it's generally very likable. It just has that extra layer of nostalgia for me, of like, oh yeah, I did listen to this song. I remember seeing like the video for this song on MTV, like when they used to play music videos and stuff. But yeah, as you guys both said, all the performances are really great. Just to touch on a couple people that weren't mentioned, because I agree that everyone mentioned so far is incredible. Lucas Hedges is in it. He plays he's like the redheaded kid who's in the play with her. He was also in 3 Billboards.
Yeah, he was.
I think he's very good in this. Like, I think way more interesting than he was in 3 Billboards. He's also in from Manchester by the Sea from like last year, which he's really good in. This is more in line with how good he is in Manchester by the Sea. Also, Timothée Chalamet, who's nominated for Call Me by Your Name this year, is in it. He's great. I actually really, really enjoy his character a lot, which I think is something we can get into come spoiler time. And then an actor I'm not familiar with, but Tracy Letts, who played the dad. Like, I think the dad is like, he balances a lot of the movie out really well, I guess, in a lot of the scenes of like, because you have a lot of like mother-daughter conflict in the movie, and they kind of butt heads a lot, and he's kind of the mediator sometimes, and I think he just does a really good job of, kind of foiling all of what they're going on with.
That character made me really sad, actually, because I was incredibly frustrated with him the whole time. Yeah, I found it was frustrating the way both Lady Bird and the mom walk all over him, and I also found it frustrating that he never stood up for himself to either one of them. Lady Bird would be like, I want to go to college and like it's going to cost a lot of money, and the mom would be like, your dad doesn't have a job. Does he need to come in here and explain how he doesn't have a job to you? I'm like threatening to make him come in here and humiliate himself in front of his daughter to prove a point. And then Lady Bird, on the opposite of that, she would basically hear the words out of her mother's mouth being like, oh yeah, my dad doesn't have a job and we're poor. I want to go to like college out of state, and I want you to refinance the house to do it because I'm just a selfish girl, So I found both of those things insanely frustrating for the father figure, and I wanted him to stand up to both of them the whole time.
Yeah, well, I think what he does a good job of is balancing that without, at least for me, like I didn't just feel sorry for him the entire movie. Like he wasn't like an overly sympathetic like character.
No, he was pathetic.
Like he didn't mope around or anything like that. Like
I don't know that I would. I wouldn't necessarily call him pathetic. I think that his personality in the movie, if he were to stand up for himself, they wouldn't be married anymore. And I'm not saying that it's abusive. Like I think it fits. They fit together because of his personality and the mom's personality.
Sure.
They fit that way. Like if he were to start arguing back, they would never stop arguing. So they have to, like, their personalities to live together have to mesh, and that's the type of person he has to be to complement who she is. Does that make sense?
Sure.
And the mom and the daughter are so similar that's why.
But I also think spoilery.
No, we'll be vague.
Is this spoilery?
We'll shelve this until we get to spoilers, because there are some stuff we're
getting
about.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, or like it seems like the conversation could very well go there. So I think it's really funny. I think it's super universal. Like it is specifically about like a young girl in 2002 in a Catholic school, which are all very specific things. But I think Greta Gerwig does a great job in both like writing and directing of making it universal, as you said, Chris. And another thing I think that she does really, really well is like she knows how much of a scene we need to establish like what she needs to establish, and she gets out. Like there are scenes that are very short and like could be drawn out scenes in like another film, but they're just very short. We get what they're about, we get the point, and we move on without like any huge like dialogue or making like huge moments out of them. I think it's very, very, very well crafted and edited and directed by her in that sense.
Yeah, absolutely. She taps into that nostalgic coming of age feeling very well. Even though I expressed earlier that Lady Bird's a very frustrating character, she never seems unrealistically so. She seems like a regular teenage girl who is still trying to discover herself and is going to make a series of stupid decisions and bad decisions and selfish decisions that I think we understand she is likely going to grow out of.
They're all the decisions that she makes, whether good or bad, are all rooted in the character, right?
Exactly, and like what she thinks is important at that age,
right.
and the lack of perspective she really has on anything. and it's easy to catch on to that, especially when she tries to date and she tries to navigate best friends and switches between people because she doesn't know who she is or what she thinks is cool yet.
Yeah, there's a lot of the cliches of high school, and they're probably cliches because they're true, but there's a lot of that going on, but I think they come out of the story very naturally and don't feel cliche to me at all.
They feel like memories that I never had, basically. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
They feel authentic, and they don't feel contrived, and they don't feel, okay, this is the scene where she has to realize this. It just seems like, oh, this is the scene where she realized that boy she was crushing on wasn't interested the way she thought he was. That kind of stuff. And I think we should move to spoilers.
Yeah,
I was going to ask, I think it's about time.
All right.
So, yes, spoiler warning. Stop listening now if you haven't seen Lady Bird or if you don't care about having Lady Bird spoiled for you. Okay.
That was it.
That's it. So who wants to go first and spoil some stuff?
Well, let me finish my thought. So, like, the scene whenever she finds out that the theater kid that she was first crushing on ends up being gay. And up to that point in the movie, you would think, oh, she would be devastated at this. But instead, she takes it in stride, and she's immediately on to another boy, And it's almost like just a phase of her life we're seeing be closed.
Yeah, I love the scene afterwards where they're listening to Dave Matthews Band in the car.
Yeah, it's great. It's wonderful, and it seems so genuine and so authentic. And her friend, while they were signing up for the theater play, and they were talking about how Lady Bird wanted the part, and she wasn't as talented as she thought she was, and she's like, "Now you're gonna get to be the one who's all romantic with that boy I like," and then her friend's like, "Yeah, that's probably the only chance I have at that, by the way." Yeah.
I love the interaction that they had when they were signing up, and Lady Bird put Lady Bird in quotation marks, and then Julie put Julie because her name's Julie Ann.
Yeah.
But she put Julie in quotation marks, and Lady Bird's like, "Why would you do that? That's your name." She's like, "No, it's not." It's that the little interaction. So
she's like, "Well, you put Lady Bird in quotes," and she's like, "Well, it's not the same thing." And her friend's like, "I'm not sure you're right."
Yeah.
I loved that. That was so good.
There's so many moments like that are like those just silly things that you do, like when you're a kid or when you're a teenager, when you're in high school. Like, she wants to be the unique one with like the odd nickname of Lady Bird, right? Mm-hmm. And so like when someone else tries to like even copy it, like she calls her out on it, and like, "Oh, you don't have to put your name in quotes." Like, it's just, and then the other girl, like, there's no reason for her to put her name in quotes. Like, Lady Bird's kind of right that she doesn't need to do it, but she's also like copying her friend. So it's like the imitation, but like imitating, trying to be original, like all that like conflicting ideas are like super present throughout this movie.
And trying to find
something
her identity.
I love. Yeah.
Well, they both are.
Yeah. Back to the gay theater friend. I thought a really powerful scene was when he goes to the coffee shop, and there's this awkward moment where he's sitting in there, and she sees him. She walks away, and then he comes around to the back, and he's just so scared, like, and ashamed of himself. And then she just hugs him, and she's like, "Look, I'm not going to tell anybody about this. Your secret's safe with me," or whatever. But I thought that was a really powerful moment.
It's super powerful, and I think also she kind of keeps at a distance from like the climax of that scene where like she goes and like embraces him and hugs him, and doesn't give us like, at least not to my recollection, like a close up on either one of their faces while they're hugging, right? Like, we stay at this distance and we actually see like the characters from like head to toe in the frame, and it's like this really awkward looking hug to me. Like, even though it's this like very sweet, caring, like powerful moment, like their hug is still very awkward looking. And I think that's like intentional. It's like, while all this semi-serious like stuff is going on, they're still like awkward teenagers.
Right.
But like also without intentionally creating characters that are awkward teenagers. Like, she's showing that in a different way, and I like that.
Like his crying in that too. Like, so it's rooted in this, like, probably to what you're saying, Justin, it's rooted in this reality. And you're right, it's a goofy teenage hug, but because of the reality, it doesn't call out the goofy teenage hug, because it's a powerful moment in that hug. I think. Well,
and also you feel bad for him, because you kind of pick up that his family is really conservative. Like, there's that scene earlier when he and Lady Bird are in his grandma's house, and there's that picture of Ronald Reagan on the wall.
Oh yeah.
And then and Lady Bird's like, "Is this a joke?" And he's like, "No, it's really not a joke."
And they go to Catholic school. Like, I don't think too much more conservative.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
And
that's the just real quick on the picture, like that's the subtlety of her knowing how much of a subject or a concept or a scene we need to like imply those things, right?
Right.
Like we don't get the thing where like we meet the family and realize they're a Republican or like say something negative about a gay person, right? It's like this quick 2-3 line dialogue exchange about a picture that initially almost just feels like a passing moment, like something to like it's going to bridge our way.
Well, we don't know he's gay yet, so we don't really.
Right.
We just like, oh, his family's conservative.
But we have to. We end up putting it together, and that's what I was talking about with the. It doesn't spoon feed you everything.
Right.
Like you have to kind of pick up on the context clues.
Right. Right. And that's not to imply that anyone whose family's conservative would not be accepting of them being gay, but just speaking from my own perspective, like I have family members that are super conservative, and it would be something that I would have to be very careful about if that were my circumstance, right? So I'm applying it to this movie.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and even think of the time period too, like 2002.
Yeah.
There has been progress made for the gay community since 2002. Like it was, it was a bit more of a taboo thing. So yeah, I think if we can talk a little bit about Lady Bird, the character, something that I found really, really interesting and one of those universal things, but very specific, like touches for the character. At the beginning of the film, they're listening to Grapes of Wrath, like her and her mom are driving back from like college from like, I think their tour, the implication is they've toured a college.
Yeah, they've done their summer thing before your senior year where you drive around all the different colleges to tour.
Yeah. And so they finish listening to like the audiobook of Grapes of Wrath, which is just kind of funny on its own. But the Grapes of Wrath is sort of about this, if I remember correctly, the family like leaves the East Coast and goes west to find work. And it's this journey like across the country, like in the middle of the Great Depression. And Lady Bird also wants to make that journey, except from like West Coast to East Coast to like go to New York, right? And also like she wants to live through this event. Like she says like the line, she says like, I really wish I could live through an event. 2002 is like the most boring year. Mm-hmm. Like nothing happens. Nothing is happening in 2002. And I think that ties in with like this idea of like the listening to the Grapes of Wrath with like the Great Depression and stuff. And I thought that was just kind of an interesting, like subtle, like what they're doing has a little bit more going on than like just being a joke that they're listening to Grapes of Wrath, which initially I think the first time I thought it was. But about the character, like I think that's such a universal, like youthful thing is that you never realize like what's going on around you. Because like in 2002, like that's a year removed from 9/11, right? Mm-hmm. That's in like the midst, I think, or just the beginning of like the Iraq War, right? Mm-hmm. And there's all of this stuff going on, and there's all of these important things going on around her, and she doesn't realize it. So I just think like that sentiment like really sets you up from like where she starts the film is like, I wish I could live through an event, and she has no idea that she is. Yeah.
She's self-absorbed. She doesn't see anything outside of herself, right? She's that teenage self-absorbed. I do have that moment though. So they stop, they're both crying as the book finishes. And then she tries to turn on the radio. They've had like this really nice touching moment. And I think this describes their relationship in general. So they go from being like bonding to fighting, and then of course she jumps out of the car. But I love that opening sequence there. I think it's really funny, and they do that through the whole show. Like when they're shopping, they'll be like, "Oh, that's a pretty dress. You should wear that," and then they go right back to fighting. Like that's just
like
how they communicate.
Switches that flip, like almost imperceptibly.
It's just like
don't even
one
know why.
passive aggressive comment away. Like both of them are ready to be mad at the other one at the drop of a hat.
Right.
The mom character, she reminds me so much of how I act sometimes and how my father acted towards me, and how I guess just probably generally how people act, which is just the idea that you can bully someone into making them into the person you want them to be, making fun or belittling all the things that they're into, and you can tell that she's doing it from a perspective of wanting to help her daughter become a person that she knows she needs to be. Like, be appreciative of your life, stop being so selfish, be grateful for what you have, things like that. but they're also things that you could never just tell someone. You could never guilt trip them into feeling. She just has to grow into those feelings and come upon them on her own. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. But I think you're right that like the mother character is never doing these things because like she dislikes her daughter or doesn't love her or anything like that. And I think our Greta Gerwig knows that and treats it that way. Like I don't ever feel like she just hates her daughter or like she's evil or like she's mean. Well, I think she's very like understood and sympathetic. And there's a scene way later in the film where Lady Bird is talking to the older nun who like she had like vandalized her car earlier in the film, but they're talking and she's talking about Lady Bird's college essay about growing up in Sacramento, and she talks about how much she writes with love about it. And Lady Bird says like, well, I don't love it. I'm just writing what I see. I just paid attention. And then the nun says, well, aren't they kind of the same thing? Like
love and
attention.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of like really like the big like summation of Lady Bird and her mother's relationship.
I agree. Well, there's even a couple parts in the movie where she's bitching about her mom to someone like her friends or her peers. And I think there's even there's a place where like Lady Bird comments on how she should be good at math because her dad is, and then Julie says like maybe it's your mom's fault or something like that. So, but there's also scenes where every time they're like, your mom's really hard on you. Like I think it's the scene whenever the first guy she has a crush on, after he comes to her work and he's asking her not to tell everyone that he's gay. He even says like, your mom's really hard on you, and Lady Bird even defends her mom right then. Like, at the drop of a hat, as soon as someone else criticizes Lady Bird's mom, Lady Bird will be on the defense, being like, well, she just loves me a lot.
Right.
And so it's like, on some level, Lady Bird knows exactly why her mom is doing all these things. It's just, when she's talking to herself in her own head, I don't think she wants to see it. But as soon as someone else, from the outside perspective, criticizes how her mom treats Lady Bird is like, no, my mom loves me. She just don't understand. She's just hard on me. Like, she says that a couple times. And I thought that was really interesting. I didn't pick up on it the first time, but the second time I did. And that kind of goes the feeling that I had when I was a teenager if I ever disagreed with my parents, which was like, I know they want what's best for me, even though I can't stand them right now. I know they love me, and I know that everything they're doing, I can see why they're doing it, even if it makes me mad in the moment.
One of the things I really liked that they didn't necessarily explain, and I think there was a little bit at the very end of the movie, but the brother, I'm assuming adopted brother.
Oh, and Miguel?
Yeah. They never explain it, and I think like one of the letters that she wrote at the end of the play was, or not in the end of the movie was, "You're a miracle." You know, like, so my guess is that like they had been trying to get pregnant, they adopted, and then they finally did get pregnant and had Lady Bird. But they never explain it. They never explain Miguel, and I think his story arc where he goes for the same job as his dad, and he takes all the metal out of his face. You know, like it's all just, it's a village kind of movie. You know, like where you watch. Lady Bird is in the middle of it and the mom, but it's this village and you watch everybody around them and you watch everybody grow over this year, and I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, definitely. I thought the scene where the dad comes out of the interview, like the interview scene was funny, and immediately after that we have them coming out and he runs into his son and we have this like very touching moment of him like, you know, straightening up his son's suit and like basically saying like, go get him, like I'm pulling for you. When it could have easily been, you know, a different reaction. But I think that's just one of the things that makes the dad so great and so likable.
Man, that part's so sad for me.
Yeah, it's very sad. And I think that's one of the filmmaking touches, again, compliments to Greta Gerwig, which I think we're going to end up doing a lot in this episode and have already done a lot. But it's like, it's the Chaplin moment of like, you make them laugh, you have this really funny scene, and then the very next scene you have to like, you know, rip their heart out and show them something emotional, and it like magnifies like the emotion even more. Like I don't think that scene is played overly sad, it just feels very sad.
Well, yeah, I think the dad is genuinely wants the son to get the job, and I think the dad at the same time also realizes that maybe he's too old for this game. You know, like he's not the young stallion anymore, and maybe things have kind of passed him by.
Well, I think what's so sad about that is I think he already knew that.
Yeah, the interview shows that.
Yeah. I think he already knew that, and this is just like the insult to injury. segment. Like, he was already leaving feeling real bad about himself. And this is even worse because, like, not only is he embarrassed that his son is interviewing for the same job, but that his daughter saw it too. I don't know. The second time I watched that, the shame that he was exuding really got to me.
Yeah, just a few things that I wanted to talk about that I thought was really funny, and I wanted to ask you about too, Chris. But like a lot of the stuff that's going on when they're getting ready for the play, like with like the theater teacher and the theater games, and one that I thought was really, really like funny, but maybe a little bit sad too. But they play the first one to cry wins game.
Yeah, I'm not sure that that's a real game. I've never played it. I mean, except for like in, like never in an acting class, like.
Sure. But some of the other games were like.
Yeah, the other games, like that was definitely a high school. I mean, I never did theater in high school. I did in college, but we did games somewhat similar to that, and that was definitely those moments were really funny. The best part is though when the coach comes in, he's like, "A play's a play," and
as far as I'm concerned, a play's a play. Yeah. I love that line. Yeah, it's so good.
Yeah, the whole coach drama teacher segment was probably the funniest part of the movie to me.
And then that's another moment, and it's not much, and we get it from the mom's perspective. Like, it's so easily we could just hate the mom, but the drama teacher goes into the mom, and so there's also, you get a little bit of insight into the drama teacher, but you don't know exactly what's wrong. But he goes in, and there's this really touching scene between the two of them, and then he's like, "Please don't tell your daughter," and she's like, "No, of course not."
And they never explain what's going on with them. Like it could be cancer, it could be something.
Well, one of the kids said at the beginning early, and it was a rumor, but like that his son had overdosed on drugs. And then callously she says, "Well, it's either overdose on drugs or suicide." And then the kid says, "But my mom says that it's about the same thing if you're going to be that careless with your life." And so it's just this really callous thing that the kid says, and I don't know if that's true because there's a rumor, but I think if we put that together, like, he's having a tough time. That's why he cries so quick.
And I think what it does for the mom's character is that it's, it's a lot easier to say the right thing to someone else about someone else's problem, right? Like you can be very sympathetic and say the right thing to this guy who you don't really know. You just know he's like your daughter's teacher or whatever. But like when you have with her daughter, she doesn't know how to like say the right things. Like she cares so much about her daughter, I think, and wants the right thing for her and wants to like make her into a good person and shape her correctly, that like it's like she's overcompensating.
Well, it's that thing where like this person's exactly like you, right? And so you conflict with them the whole time, and she's like, "I know what's better." And of course Lady Bird is like, "I can find my own identity, like my identity isn't based on you." And it's also that moment in your life as a teenager where you realize your parents aren't perfect, and that's scary in itself. Like, oh, my parents are just people. My teachers are just people, and they make mistakes too. And that's a pretty scary moment in a young person's life, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and it also shows that while Lady Bird is trying to find herself and she's trying to find her identity and the person she is, it kind of shows that the adults are doing something similar too. You're always trying to find yourself, and you're always trying to become the person you want to be. Her father's trying to become the person who can get a job. Her mother is trying to become the person who can talk to her daughter without criticizing her. Everyone's trying in this movie, but I think with Lady Bird, you specifically get the impression that she'll be okay. She'll figure it out.
Right.
But she's on her way still, and maybe we're never done figuring out who we want to be.
Right.
Because all these characters are still, to some degree, trying to figure out who they are, even the ones that are old, or the ones that are older, and you would think have already figured themselves out. So, I don't know. I think it's a really smart script, and it's one of those that I think gets better the more you unpack it.
So, I have a question that's a little off topic from what we're talking about right now. But so in the scene, I guess we haven't talked about Timothée Chalamet yet, but we will. So in the scene where they go to the prom, right? And Lady Bird gets asked she wants to go to Julie's house, because she decides that she wants to go to the prom and those guys are losers. Why is Julie crying when she gets to the house? Is there something I missed?
I assume because she's had a dress for prom for months and she's got no one to go with.
Yeah. I think it's just general prom night
Was it?
I don't have a date.
I don't have a date. I don't have a friend. My friend abandoned me for like the cool, popular, pretty girl. Here I am sitting here with my mom, like, eating ice cream or something like that. Well, that's why I love the scene the second time whenever Lady Bird like knocks on her door and the mom answers and she's like, "Is Julie here?" And the mom, that's such a small moment, but you can tell the mom is just like, yes, she is. Come in. Like,
it's just what she needs.
Yeah, like, thank God, Lady Bird, Christine, you are here. I knew you guys would continue to be friends. Like, those moments, right, where that's what makes the movie feel so true. Is it's not uncommon for teenagers to flip-flop best friends, and while one person goes off and acts like a jerk, And I think that the way they're able to so quickly get back together and back in sync with one another and giggling and having fun with one another was so touching.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, that's one of the scenes that actually I get really like emotional watching, just out of like happiness.
Yeah, they're finally back.
Yeah.
So what do you guys think about Timothée Chalamet's character? We haven't talked about him much.
I think he's almost like the extreme version of what Saoirse Ronan's going through, what Lady Bird's going through. He's like constantly trying to like be this like unique original voice, but like at the same time just doing these like
nothing's unique
things
about him. He's just a douchebag.
He just fits into like such a stereotype.
Yeah, I only smoke hand-rolled cigarettes. Like
I'm anti-consumerism.
Yeah, I want to do the bartering system.
Yeah, and it's almost like a book is an accessory for it, like a fashion accessory for him, because he is always reading or like has a book. Like I thought it was really funny when they go to the parking lot and they find him there and like everyone's hanging out and having a good time, but he's just sitting on the trunk like reading. And then I think again when she goes to a party and like she finally sees him and he's just sitting by the pool by himself like reading a book again.
He's the type of person that I would like he's doing that. He's not even reading the book. He's just trying to give off a vibe. Like he just buys these books to be seen reading, I mean, he may be, but that's kind of the vibe I get from him. Maybe he doesn't even read them.
No, I get that vibe too. He's entirely style.
Yeah.
No substance.
No substance.
Yeah.
Jinx, you owe me a Coke.
Damn it.
What did you say, Chris?
I said, Jinx, you owe me a Coke.
Oh, yeah. Anyways, so I think going off of Timothée Chalamet, I think there's a lot of cliche moments in this, which I think we've touched on before, but I think what really works is that when this film is set, like people have grown up with like the cliche 80 movies, and I'm curious what you guys thought about like how many of these moments are cliche moments from the script, and how many are the characters forcing these cliches because that's what they expect. Kind of going along with Saoirse Ronan saying like, I wish that I lived through an event. Like there's this like dream of like having things from movies happen to you, and like how much of the events do you think are like the kids like trying to live into these cliches? Or do you think that they're not at all and I'm way off?
So like how they're trying to manufacture what they think they've seen in movies and they're trying to manufacture it in real life.
Yeah.
I don't know about the movies thing, but I think remembering back on my high school experience, I seem to know some girls that are a lot like Lady Bird, like the girls who seem to think that moving away from their home is going to make their lives way more interesting and that's something that you're supposed to do. And then only,
right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, there's like the typical like high school mentality that like a lot of high school kids have, which is like they assume the place that they grow up is boring and stupid and that nothing is happening there. But what they don't realize is that like places are the same everywhere,
Right.
Yeah.
There's that kind of vibe I got. Is that what you mean?
No, not really. And I guess let me give an example of something that I'm thinking of. And this is a scene that I actually didn't like the first time I watched the movie because I thought it was like overly cliche, but it was only the second time when I was thinking about this idea of kids growing up with the cliches and trying to live up to them. But the scene with her and Lucas Hedges' character when they're first starting to date and they're hanging out and they're laying in grass and she like points to the star and she's like, look at, that's our star. Let's name this star. Let's give it a name. Mm-hmm. Right. And like the first time I was like, oh, that's kind of like cliche and doesn't really like, it just feels like overly written to me. Mm-hmm. But then the second time I thought, oh, okay, this is something she's seen in a romance.
Yeah, she's seen a Walk to Remember.
And they're recreating it, or she's trying to make this moment happen. She's trying to make this relationship like the high school love story.
Mm-hmm.
from a film.
Yeah.
I mean, I've done that before, though. Like, I did that. Like, where you, like, name the star, and then, because they're just overly eager to say I love you, you know, like, and all that stuff. They're like, it's that first love thing. I mean, that's how I feel about it. I didn't necessarily see it as living up to... it was cringe-worthy for me, because they're like, oh, let's name a star together. And then he's like, I love you. And you're just like, oh, man.
No, you
why
don't.
would you say that? Yeah. And then she's like, I love you. And it was... it's just so cringe-inducing for me.
Especially because isn't that the same scene where he respects her too much to touch her boobs?
Yeah, after that.
Yeah.
He's like, I just respect you so much.
Yeah. And it's like, oh.
And then she's like, well, if you had boobs, I wouldn't touch them either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the scene immediately after that, she's talking to Julie, and she's like, it's perfectly natural not to touch a penis, is the first line.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that is when they break away from, like, this moment and get into, like, what's really going on with them, and that, you know, obviously he ends up being gay, and that's, like, the real scene. But I think prior to, it's just them playing out stuff they've seen, which I think is, like, a lot of what's going on with, like, you know, Timothée Chalamet's character is just trying to be this, like he's seen, like, Rebel Without a Cause a couple too many times or something, you know.
Mm-hmm. I think that's very possible. Like, he's trying to fit going back to the identity thing, everybody's trying to find their identity or trying to claim an identity, right?
Yeah.
To a certain extent.
Yeah. And that's why she wants to go to prom. Whenever he's like, let's not go to prom, it's like, well, you want to go to prom because it's like it's the thing to do, and she thinks they're gonna. Well, I guess, like, at that point, she's realized their relationship is, like, not going well.
I mean, they go to prom even though they're basically broken up, I think, and then they play the Dave Matthews song, and the friends are like, I hate this song. She's like, no, I like it. She realizes how much of a douchebag these friends are, douchebags, I guess, and wants to go to prom with Julie, her true friend.
And just real quick about the Dave Matthews song, I do want to, like, just say that I appreciate the amount of, like, kind of bad music that's in this film, because I think with some indie films it's like you kind of the best of the best, like, in terms of music selection, or like you get, like, really cool songs that, like, are just, like, genuinely good songs, but this we get, like, really kind of bad, like, early 2000s late 90s songs, like the Dave Matthews one, and, like, at the first, I think it's the first dance that they go to, which is probably, like, homecoming. It's not prom. It's when she's with Lucas Hedges' character. But, like, they're playing, like, Bone Thugs and Harmony Crossroads, which is an awful song, but, like, it's so fits that area. But, like, not being afraid to, like, put in, like, songs that are bad into the movie, I think is
Crash
interesting.
is a good song. You're not my friend anymore.
What song?
No. Crash.
Crashed Into Me by Dave Matthews.
Well, and it has... it has a lot of sentimental
Dave
value.
Matthews has never made a good song in his life.
All right.
But what I would say is, so I read somewhere, Greta Gerwig she, like, wrote personal letters to all these different bands so that she could, like, I don't know, get a discounted song, and, you know, because she didn't have enough money to pay the regular rights, and so she wrote and told them why it was so important for these songs to be in her song. Which I thought, or not in her song, in her movie, which I thought was pretty cool.
That is cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, the indie vibe and indie spirit is certainly, like, alive and well in this movie, even down to, like, pinching pennies.
Yeah. But it doesn't necessarily show up on screen. You're not like, they didn't have any money, so, like, it looks good.
No, I remember that kind of music from high school. I graduated a little later than you guys. But there were still some kids who thought Dave Matthews was the type of music to listen to in high school, and and they seemed like the kind of people that would be hanging out with Lady Bird and Julie in this movie.
Yeah, that movie was popular, or that music was the most popular when I think I was in middle school, and I feel like 6th to, like, 7th and 8th grade is the time that, like, you're most susceptible to like the mainstream music that's on the radio, and like just like liking whatever is, like, top 40, because, like, those were the times in my life where, like, I owned a Limp Bizkit album. You know?
Yeah.
Or, like, I owned, like, a Spice Girls album, or
I owned a Third Eye Blind album.
Yeah. Well, Third Eye Blind is still good, I think, but I think we did own them because, like, they were the most popular thing, whether they were good or not.
Right. Yeah, and the same thing it makes sense. So, like, Dave Matthews, even if it's not, like, what I would consider good music. It's totally appropriate of the time and invokes that. Like if it were the '90s, she could have like Everclear playing, right? And I might not like Everclear, but that would exude the '90s, like Dave Matthews exudes the early 2000s.
Does anybody got any other points they want to talk about?
Dave Matthews forever.
Other than that, we will not talk about Dave Matthews. We've talked about Dave Matthews more than I ever expected to on this podcast.
Me too.
Yeah.
Closing thoughts?
Yeah, I just want to say I like where the movie ends off with the driving sequence where we're actually like we're match cutting between Lady Bird driving around and her mom driving around.
Yeah, that's really, really good, really powerful. That's like, emotional, like maybe a little misty-eyed when I watch that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that and the shot where the mom is driving and she like is too prideful to get out of the car and tell Lady Bird goodbye at the airport. And then then as soon as she drives away, she hates herself and she's like, what am I doing? And she like tries to like turn around and get back into the airport. And like just in time for the dad to be like, you missed her, but don't worry, she'll be back later.
Yeah, that was the ending sequence.
Yeah, that choked me up quite a bit.
Yeah, I think the dad has that understanding that she'll be back. She's not gone forever. I'm not sure the mother quite has like the clear head to think about those things. And I think that's kind of where the movie left off for me, and like it felt really good is this idea that what you're running away from and like rebelling against as like a youth is like oftentimes like what you end up like kind of longing for like later on in life. And I think they kind of resolve it very quickly here, but like when they ask the guy at the college party, like asks her name, she doesn't say Lady Bird, she says Christine. Mm-hmm. So she like goes back to her name that she was trying to rebel away from her name. She wants nothing to do with like Catholic school and like go to a regular school. I think at one point someone asks her like, are you considering any Catholic based colleges? And she's like, no way. And where does she go?
She's homesick.
Where does she go? Like when she's, wakes up hungover, she goes to a church, to Catholic church.
Right.
That's what's so cool about this movie is the movie goes on for just long enough for Lady Bird to realize what she's lost or to miss where she came from, right? Like by going to the Catholic church and calling her mom at the very end. And yeah, I think that makes the movie that much better, I think. Mike, you have any last thoughts?
No, other than just I'm excited to see what Greta Gerwig does next.
Absolutely.
I really enjoyed Lady Bird. I enjoyed it a lot more the second time. And I would not be upset at all if this movie won everything at the Academy Awards. I don't think it will, but I certainly would not be upset in the least.
Yeah, I don't think it will either. I really want Saoirse Ronan and Laurie Metcalf to take home their ass.
Their what?
Oh my.
I think they're going to take that home.
They're acting Oscars is what I was trying to say, and it almost came out as Askers, and then I tried to stop mid-word from saying Askers, and I ended up just saying ass. So
got real interesting real fast.
My bad. I want them to take home their acting Oscars, and Mike, you can leave that in. Actually, I think it's funny. I'm not embarrassed by misspeaking.
Okay.
Just leave in my explanation
right.
as well, so it doesn't sound like I just said they hoping they take home their ass. But I would like it to win Best Picture. I don't know that it will, but that so far we haven't talked about the post yet, but that is my vote. And even just not even watching the film again, but just like thinking about it and talking through the scenes and stuff, like I like it more now than I did after the second time that I watched it.
Yeah, more than when we started the podcast.
Exactly, yeah. And I think it's just one of those that the great movies get better on repeat viewing and when thinking about them, and this is one that does that.
And this is and Dunkirk is a great movie. I don't know that I'd be like, and I love it, and so don't get me wrong when I say this, but like I wouldn't be super excited to sit down and watch Dunkirk because it's so oppressive and like dominating, like it's not very happy. Lady Bird, I would sit down and watch again, and I'd be happy about it. I'd be like, all right, let's watch Lady Bird, It'd be a fun time as opposed to Dunkirk, which would not be super fun.
Okay, and we'll move on from Lady Bird, and real quick, just ask you guys, what is you guys' favorite high school coming-of-age film?
I'll go first. So my favorite movie, it's pretty easy, Dancer, Texas, population 91, I think.
Yeah.
Have you guys ever seen it?
No, I've seen the cover.
Yeah. I think you recommended it to me once, and I started watching it, and something happened, and I never got back around to it.
Yeah, it's really good. It's definitely has that 90s feel. It's got like Ethan Frome, the Can't Hardly Wait guys.
That is very 90s.
Yeah, and
Ethan Embry.
Ethan Embry,
right.
and the
Steve Zahn?
Empire Records. Steve Zahn in it?
I don't think Steve Zahn is in it.
Never mind. I must be thinking of a different movie.
Anyways, it's just really good. It's about these 4 kids who live in this city with only 91 people in there. All 4 of them plan on leaving, so the town's going to go down to 87 people, if my math is correct.
It is.
And it's the graduation night, and that was all that was in their graduating class was those 4 people. And so they go through a bunch of stuff, and some of them end up leaving, and some of them stay. Just really good.
I was thinking of a movie called Happy Texas from 1999.
Oh yeah, that's a little
with
bit
Steve Zahn.
That's and William H. Macy. Oh no, what's his name? But anyways, that's not here nor there. But yeah, really good. If you guys get a chance, when I win, maybe I'll pick this as my Oscar bet movie.
Cool. All right, Mike.
My coming of age high school-esque movie would be Last Picture Show, directed by Peter Bogdanovich. Have you guys seen this movie?
Yes.
Oh yeah. That was on my short list.
Yeah, starring Jeff Bridges and Sybil Shepherd, Timothy Bottoms, Ben Johnson, Ellen.
Cloris Leachman.
Yeah, Cloris Leachman, Ellen Bernstein. It's a great movie. I think it takes place in the early 50s as like a group of high schoolers come of age in a small Texas town. It was famously filmed in black and white. I think Peter Bogdanovich tells the story on like every interview he ever comes on about this thing, whereas that was at the urging of Orson Welles, whereas they were trying to figure out a nice small town to film it in. And Orson Welles comes up to Peter Bogdanovich and says, "Of course it will be in black and white." And then so it was. And
Peter Bogdanovich is a good actor, but he's so so snooty, and he's got his like whenever he does the interviews. I'm sorry to interrupt, but he's got, what is that thing called that's around his neck every time? Like, it's not a scarf; it's like a cravat or something.
Ascot.
I don't know, it's every time. He's always name dropping Orson Welles. Anyways, He's a great director, but it's funny to watch his interviews.
Well,
if Orson Welles tells you to shoot your movie in black and white, I think you
yeah.
shoot your movie in black and white.
Right. But I think it's funny because I think Peter Bogdanovich did the smart thing, which was like, direct a really big hit movie, direct a few more, and get out. Don't keep directing into your old age to where you do the Ridley Scott thing. Yeah. So anyway, I think Last Picture Show. I won't go too far into it, but it's the classic coming-of-age story. It is released on the Criterion in the...
America Lost and Found?
No, not BBC. What is it?
BBS.
BBS box set. Excuse me.
Yeah,
in the America Lost and Found BBS box set, along with 5 Easy Pieces and a few other really great movies.
Speaking of directors who maybe should pull out sometime soon before they get to, overstay their welcome, I'm going to go with Rushmore for mine, with Wes Anderson. And I just say that because, like, everyone's parroting the Wes Anderson style. And I personally would like to see him do something different, to stretch out, do something a little bit different. Like, when you keep doing what everyone's, like, kind of parodying you for, it's, I don't know, I think at a certain point you should try something else.
It's like the great bands always change their sound.
I think it depends on if the parodies do it better than you, right? Or if the parodies do it just as good as you. Like, there's the David Lynch thing where people spoof David Lynch a lot, but then he came back this year and released Twin Peaks Season 3, which I have not seen, but everyone says is phenomenal. And from what I understand, it's the most David Lynchiest thing you've ever seen.
Right. So he's doing it better than the parodies, sure. But I don't know. That was just a side comment. I think that at some point his style will overstay its welcome and people will become less interested in it. I could be wrong, but I think I would just like to see him do something slightly different just to see, because like his best films, in my opinion, or like my favorite films of his, are the earlier ones, like before he went like to Wes Anderson, with maybe the exception of Grand Budapest. But Rushmore, I think, it's right in that like sweet spot between like Royal Tenenbaums and Bottle Rocket. And it's like sort of like this like really great blend of the two styles. Like he hasn't gone full Wes Anderson yet, but he's doing more than just like the more rudimentary camera stuff that he's doing in Bottle Rocket. And it's just a really, really funny film. It's shot here in Houston. I think I've like seen some of the places where they filmed around here, and it's Jason Schwartzman and Bill Murray having a war over a woman and just kind of one-upping each other for a while, and then there's a lot of like subtlety to it. There's a lot of theater stuff in it. Like he puts on plays and
Sicario. Is it Sicario?
It's Serpico.
Serpico, yeah.
Puts in Serpico, but the plays are very funny, and like, and this is sort of like Wes Anderson style. I think that's where like the Wes Anderson style comes out the most is in the plays.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is really good. And for the record, Justin and I live in Houston. That's why it's a big deal.
Yeah. Cool. Is that it?
I think so.
That's all I got.
All right, cool. Another episode in the bag. Thank you for listening to it, and thank you, Jake Wagner-Russell, for doing our intro and outro music. If you want to hear more of his music, you can do so at soundcloud.com/bobscotch.
Don't forget about the Oscar bet. Send us in your picks before Oscars night, and we will contact you if you get more right than any of us.
Yeah, I think keep in touch on your stream. We're going to do an Annihilation episode pretty soon, and for sure the post will be coming out soon as well. So keep an eye out for that.
Yep, and if you want to follow along with what we're doing next, send us your Oscar picks. Talk to us about Lady Bird. Whatever you want to talk about, we will gladly talk about it. You can like us on Facebook at facebook.com/casualcinemedia. You can talk to us in our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/casualcinemedia. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at casualcinemedia, or you can email us directly at casualcinemedia@gmail.com.
All right. And until next time, we'll see you guys later.
Bye-bye.
See you later.